Hello, everybody. Danny J here for Capes Not Included right here on the DJB Productions Network. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Make sure you share the channel. Tell everybody about it. We always want to hear from you guys. There's always a comment section down below. So definitely you want to check it out today. It is Capes Not Included. We're back. We were on a little bit of a hiatus, and now we're back stronger than ever. We're going to be talking about the Avengers movie, the first movie, how we got there, what it meant to us, and where it led us. Okay, so before we do that, let me introduce everybody that's on the panel. First and foremost, let me go over to my man, Matt Sunner.
Good morning. Good morning.
You know, we got Matt Sunner on the line here.
Hey,
And
10 years since the first Avengers movie. Woo.
10 years. And then, joining the DJB Productions Network, he's a blood-sucking son of a bitch. Give it up for Jason Leach, everybody.
What's going on, good people?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 10 years, and look how far that whole MCU has come in that 10 short years.
Seriously. And I think
doing
that's
some awesome stuff.
I think that's a big thing, and, you know, not for nothing, you know, there's a lot that goes along with it. First and foremost, let's start with, you know, getting up to it. You know, I don't think we had any kind of comprehension that we would get the MCU. Because it starts with it starts with Iron Man 1, but technically you also have the Incredible Hulk with what's his name?
Eric Bana.
No, Eric Bana. You thought something was happening, that just
right.
went go awry. But then you get what's his face from Fight Club,
Edward Norton.
Edward Norton, yeah. But that is my preferred Hulk.
Yeah, me too.
That Hulk itself was scary. It was a scary, intense thing. Now, granted, Mark Ruffalo's Hulk does actually look more comic appropriate, if that makes sense. But I don't find him. I think his soft features tend to make him less menacing. Whereas Edward Norton's Hulk, he was just like, that was a scary dude.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I just thought that movie was great. And I love that they don't mention it too much, but it is part of the MCU. And,
right.
you know, and I'm glad that they did that, because that movie in itself is just a great movie, The Incredible Hulk. But you have Iron Man, which, much like Spider-Man years before, first time we're ever seeing Iron Man on the big screen.
Yeah.
How's this going to play out? And, you know, Robert Downey Jr., you couldn't get a better Tony Stark.
Agreed.
No, he was perfect for that role. He was.
Legit. I thought the story was good. It explained him very well. They kept it comic appropriate. The funny thing is about keeping it comic appropriate or whatever is that you'll get those hardcore fans who are like, that's not what happened. That's a movie's got to be different. You only have 2 to 3 hours to tell 5 years of comic. Okay.
Right.
So, like, there has to be some embellishment. There has to be something that moves it along. And I always equate a comic book movie to a dog's life versus a human's life. You know, 1 dog year is 7 human years, or whatever the case is, right? So it's a faster lifespan. So that's why in a movie, you have to kind of rush through stuff and get to the point.
I mean, it's one of those things that, you know, you do have such a, you know, when you're making a movie that already has some sort of written source material, how do you fit everything into it? You know, it's kind of like, I always explain it as you look at, you know, if you go into like the horror genre, if you look at like Stephen King movies,
right?
You know, some of his best movies, you know, some adaptations of his books were actually done as miniseries or as multi-part movies, because he embellishes, you know, he puts so much detail in there, and there is so much storytelling in there that if you cut too much out, it really kind of ruins the narrative, you know, and it's very difficult to do. So especially then when you're dealing with comics, where, you know, stuff is fleshed out over multiple issues, sometimes over multiple years.
Yeah.
You know, and then like, how are we going to fit all this and like you said, Dan, into like hour and a half, maybe 2 hours.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
hard to do it, and sometimes you have to modify, embellish, shorten, condense, and it's just the way it
Well,
is.
it's a funny thing. Like Todd McFarlane when he did Spawn, the movie Spawn, which
Mhm.
technically is not a great movie, as far as like a movie being made, for the time. But it was a great movie. Like
Mhm.
fans love that movie. I love that movie.
Mhm.
But he said it's very hard to get 5 years of comics into an hour and a half. So
Yeah.
we got to do what we got to do. We got to get from point A to point B a lot quicker than we did in the comics. We can't just spell things out anymore. It's like you have to play the assumption game, and you have to kind of cater to the audience that doesn't read the comics
Mhm.
Right.
because you can't. You want to make money at the end of the day. Bottom
Mhm.
line, you're not voluntarily making this movie. You're not saying, okay, nerd who's in his mom's basement and you're 53, I'm making this movie for you. No, you can't be like that. You got to make it for as much as it takes to make these movies. You got to make that money back so you can make
Yeah.
more, and that's what it comes down to. So I, in comparison to the DCEU, and there's a lot of reasons behind it, whatever. Obviously, with Marvel, there is a direction, and Marvel had, they stuck to their guns, and they also Disney allowed them to do what they have to do with the property, whereas Warner Brothers wasn't doing that at the time. Was with AT&T, now is with Discovery. That's a whole other show. But the thing is, it's with the MCU, there was a direction, and we didn't know what that direction was as an audience. But hell, did they lead us down a direction that we
Oh
got
yeah.
Iron Man? We got Captain America. Chris Evans, what a great Captain America.
Yeah.
Let's talk about him for a second. The first Avenger, to me, was very Indiana Jones like. And I love
Yeah.
those time
Yeah.
period movies because
Yeah.
for some reason, time period movies tend to be more exciting. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because they make them more exciting because there's not enough technological advancements at that time frame, but like it was just like a swashbuckling. That's no other way to describe it.
There's a lot. Well, the story kind of
Yeah.
involves a lot of improvising and kind of thing because,
Yeah.
like I said, people don't have this technology. So how do you do this? And it
Right.
really kind of shows, how truly it was in those times. Everybody
Yeah.
improvised.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's a cool thing. And that's I don't think Matt, you're flickering big time.
I have no idea why.
The Matrix is messing up Matt.
There we go. There we go. What the heck is going on here?
You're going crazy. But the
The
thing
thing
is,
I really like.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go
the
ahead.
thing I really like about the MCU movies is each movie is kind of self-contained, yet it's part of a bigger story. And now this bigger story is probably up to 30 some odd hours, maybe even more. I didn't do the math, but
we're watching a big TV series
yeah,
put on
yeah,
the big screen, and you're right. That's such a cool thing. And let's face it, like you get trilogies and stuff like that, but
yeah,
excuse me. But at the end of the day, you don't get storytelling like we got from the MCU. You don't get it. It's one of those things where, um, what an amazing thing to say. I want to go back to the movies and see what happened next. I mean,
yeah,
it's a moneymaker above
Yeah.
anything else. You know, um, I could say out of the 20 plus movies that the MCU have done, I maybe only did not like two or three,
yeah,
which I think is a great day. I mean,
yeah.
that's a great record, not for nothing.
All right, throw out which ones did you not like?
Okay, all right. From starting from the beginning, I did not like. It's actually more than three. If I did not like Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah.
I was not a
Yeah.
fan of that at all, and I think that's kind of a common consensus.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That one didn't do much for me either. I think even too the first time the wife and I saw that, we didn't see it in the theater. We
Yeah.
were at home sitting around,
Yeah,
and I actually fell asleep at the end of it.
Wow.
yeah, it was boring.
Yeah,
a
I kind
very-
of like
and
suddenly it's like I'm watching and suddenly I'm like wait a minute, what happened? What did I miss?
And here's a funny
I
thing,
dozed
like
off.
I, as a fan before the movies, right? I wasn't a big Thor fan because I wasn't a super huge comic reader, so I know like the mythology was moved into Marvel. You have Hercules, you have Thor, all these
Mhm.
Greek gods and everything like that, Zeus and everything, right? And I'm like, well, how are they going to be in a comic book? I always thought that, right? So I'm like, this character, I'm not big into this character. I would see him randomly on a cartoon somewhere, like, not my favorite character. When I went and saw the first Thor movie, I was like, I'm a Thor fan.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They made me a Thor fan just in that first movie. So I was
Yeah.
psyched to see Dark
Mhm.
World, and I was let down. I was like, ugh,
Yeah.
that movie kind of sucked. Maybe they blew their load. Because it's
Yeah.
early in the MCU, remember, too. We don't have that many movies to
Yeah.
play off of, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
They were still
but
experimenting and toying with some of the stories, and so I mean, you can kind of give them a little bit of a break on it because it wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
I will
It
go back and
wasn't
I've watched it
terrible. I
again,
didn't
and
like
it was
it.
like,
Right.
okay, it's a decent movie, but like you said, it didn't compared to
Right.
the rest of the MCU.
Right.
It's
It's
nothing. Right.
kind of down here.
Now, for me, then the next one I wasn't super crazy about was Iron Man 2.
Okay.
No?
And that was the one where it was
It was the man.
Whiplash,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
it was
well, yeah.
also, it was Whiplash, but it was also, that his character was a combination of two characters from the comic. Like it was Whiplash, but I think he was also like Titanium Man
Okay.
or the red, or like the Russian version of Iron Man, basically. So they were kind
Right.
of put together as two different into Whiplash, basically. But it was an okay movie. Once again, it did not fare to me like the first one did. Liked it better than Dark World, so it wasn't terrible. Um, was not a fan of Iron Man 3 at all.
Okay.
Right.
That's where he has the PTSD. That's after Avengers. Now keep in mind we're
Yeah.
talking about Avengers. That's
Yeah.
after Avengers. So that really hit me because Avengers, which we're going to talk about in a second, was such a huge movie.
Yeah.
And then you got that, you mentioned the Hulk with what's his face?
Eric Bana. Yeah.
Not with Eric Bana. And that came off of Spider-Man. So we were like, Spider-Man was so great, and then we're gonna get Hulk, and then we're like, oh, we got Hulk. Like, it was the
We
same
got Hulk,
thing.
but did we really get Hulk?
We got like a Stay Puft
Right.
Marshmallow Man in green. But that was the thing. It was such a letdown in what led into it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and we'll get to that in a second. But
And
like
and
now
I'll
we're
and I'll
at,
say
yeah.
and I'll
Go
say
ahead.
this too, as as being somebody who was never really big into comics, and
Yeah,
I'm more of a casual comic
yeah,
fan.
yeah,
It's kind of I grew up around it, and obviously so I
yeah.
knew the characters, but I was never big into reading them. So like coming
Same.
through into like Iron Man 3, like learning more about some of the villains like the Mandarin, you know
Yeah,
and to find out that the Mandarin was this really excellent enemy for him, and to find out in this movie the Mandarin isn't really the Mandarin.
Right.
I
It's
know. And you know
it's
what?
it's a false flag kind of thing
And here's the
going
funny
on.
thing: the way he was portrayed. Forget about what it was, but the way that Mandarin was portrayed, up
Hmm.
until the point when you found out he was an actor, I was like,
Hmm.
yeah, this is the Mandarin. This is really cool
Yeah.
because they made once again you have to kind of like make it somewhat realistic. So the Mandarin was always like magic versus technology. That's basically what it
Hmm.
was. So very unrealistic, to say
Well, when we're dealing with comics, there's always a major suspension of disbelief, so you can get away with a lot more.
a lot, but they were kind of keeping it very
Yeah.
real in a sense.
Yeah.
So to have him be like a terrorist
Hmm.
and and become this arch enemy of Tony I'm like, yeah, I could see that. That's this. They're going a good route with this.
Mhm.
And Ben Kingsley played him very, very
Oh,
well.
he did. I mean, Ben.
Yeah.
What doesn't
Like
Ben
that.
Kingsley play great?
I know. Excuse me, but like you're talking about, like this is a Mandarin. I'm like, oh, this is cool. We're getting like this cool arch enemy, and then they do that 180, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm an actor, and
Hmm.
Yeah.
I said that's where it's
Yeah.
like, when I, again, delving deeper and found out, and that and it's kind of like, oh shit. I can see where anybody who was, hardcore into the comics and is like, oh shit, we're getting the
Right.
Mandarin, suddenly goes, we didn't get the Mandarin, we got a Mandarin Orange.
And here's the thing, yeah, we did. And you know what? And here's the thing too, the guy that was the bad guy, man, I forget his name, but he was the guy from AIM, who was the bad guy, and he's like, I'm the Mandarin, like like no, you're not really.
Yeah.
Right.
Stop calling yourself that because you're not the Mandarin at all. You're saying that because you're the bad guy in this movie, but you're not the Mandarin. That's actually taken from the anime cartoon of Iron Man. There's an anime series, not a series, but a series of movies that they did the Marvel movies and the Marvel characters in anime. Wolverine, the Avengers, Iron Man, Blade, and a couple others. And that movie, which was, I think it was like Iron Man, I don't know if it was Artemis or I forget the name. And comic book people were like, oh, you're dork, whatever, shut up. Like, just shut up. I'm doing this show. But it's from an anime Iron Man. So that particular storyline, where he powers up and he can absorb this power, blah blah blah. That was Iron Man 3. That was basically what happened with that. That's all from the anime movie. So it kind of, in a way, doesn't fit the narrative of Iron Man in a sense. It did well to be a movie in a sense, but it really didn't fit in the narrative of what's going on. Because then you fast forward a number of years later, you get Shang-Chi, and we get the Mandarin in that. And that's the true Mandarin we get in Shang-Chi. So, which, by the way, in the movie had nothing to do with Tony Stark whatsoever. So there's a lot of comic uproar. I apologize. There's a lot of comic uproar, about that kind of thing. But going back to the Avengers, we finally get this team up, and we're like, wow, we're actually getting the Avengers on a movie screen, and the collaboration of all these stars in one movie, in any movie genre, aside from Cannonball Run and various movies like that, which aren't that aren't really that frequent.
Yeah.
We never had a star power movie like that.
No.
Think about that.
It's very rare these days that you get a truly ensemble cast.
Yes.
Yeah.
That you sit there and you look at their individual works and go, this person can carry a movie on their own, this one can carry it on their own, and then you suddenly bring them all together, and their combined talent and the way they work together just makes magic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. and it did. We got a great Avengers movie. It was a great story. It was simple. It wasn't complicated, and it didn't have to be.
No.
Right.
They got together. They learned how to become a team, because that was kind of a cool thing too. That they didn't just gel at first.
Yeah. The fact that it's a lot of ego and
big time,
and and they're on all their different backgrounds. Have them thinking that they're the one who has the answer, and realize that they own individually they only have a small piece to the puzzle.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love the dynamic between Tony and Steve, because they're jealous of each other. But at the end of the day, they respect the hell out of each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They know what the other can do. But the cool thing was about that was that Steve's not that guy. He's not really the jealous guy. He's the true, like, he's like, wow, if you're going to be somebody, you're going to be Captain America. And let me tell you something. Chris Evans really played that out to everything it was worth. Like, if you didn't want to be like Steve Rogers based on that performance, then you're a jerk off.
Right.
You're a horrible person, and you should
Yeah.
feel bad about yourself. You know, he really was like, you're like, oh my God, it's God and then Steve and then Jesus. It's like Jesus don't even like measure up. Because Jesus
Yeah.
hung out with prostitutes. Steve ain't hanging out with prostitutes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's like you know, it's, you know, that, you know, the way he played Steve Rogers, where he embodies the best that anybody could
Absolute best.
possibly want to be. You
Yeah.
know, the
Yeah.
best you could possibly be as a human being.
Yeah.
That's where he is. You know, and it's all good. You know, as we said, you know, kind of the stuff that you know leads us up to it. You know, showing you know how in you know Captain America, you know, he was always that scrawny dude
Yeah.
that had the heart of gold and wanted to do this, which is what made him the you know the best candidate for being Captain America. You know, because ultimately, you know, as you know, we see in Captain America, it's like he's got the will, he's got the drive, and he's got the will and the drive for all the right reasons. He just doesn't have doesn't have the equipment
Yeah.
to put it into use. And he's also you know extremely intelligent. You know he's going to think his way through the problem. You know that whole thing with you know who can ever go up there and grab that flag gets a date. You know whatever. And all these guys are trying to climb the pole, use their muscles, and he just says, "Hey, wait a minute. What if I just take down the pole? What if I bring?
Yeah.
I don't go to the flag. I bring the flag to me."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And he's a scrappy little guy, and he's his courage is unbound.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, he was Captain America long before he was Captain America.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like all they did was modify his body.
Yeah.
He
Right.
did not become anything different. And
Than what
that's
he was
what
before.
really makes him such a great character. Is
Yeah.
that as a 90-pound weakling, he was Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
Yeah.
that one scene where he jumps on the grenade and thinks he's alive to save
Right.
everybody. Now, granted, he was so fucking skinny. It wasn't
Yeah, that wasn't going to do any good.
It wasn't gonna- if anything, his birds
Somebody
would
was still
start out
catching
with-
some shrapnel off of that one.
Yeah, it was gonna be like Steve Rogers' bone shrapnel flying out at everybody. You know what I mean? But damn, this guy more than anybody else, this kid he's got more guts than everybody. And you know, he deserves the recognition. He deserves the accolades that he gets. And you know, and you can see why Peggy Carter falls for him. It ain't because like all of a sudden now he's like this sweaty buff guy. She's like, this guy is wonderful.
Yeah.
I fell in love with him. I'm not even saying. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm Steve.
You know, and then the great thing is then when you see them, you know, once we do get the Avengers,
yeah,
he tries to bring as much of that out of everybody else as he can.
Yes.
yes,
You know, and he, you know, it's like you say, you know, he's not really the jealous type, you know, and you know, we do get that whole thing of, you know, like when he says to Tony, it's like, you know, what are you without the suit? You know, and you know, we get that great joke of, you know, playboy, philanthropist, billionaire, kind of like,
Right.
you know, what don't I got, dude?
Right.
right,
You know,
right.
but it's truly that, you know, he tries to bring out of Tony that, hey, you know, great, yeah, you do have that suit, and if you try to be a better person, that makes what you are in the suit that much more powerful. You know.
And you know what? He's speaking from experience because he's like, outside of all this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm Captain America. And it's not a brag. It's like, I'm
Right.
not different.
It's the truth.
I'm not different because of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not thinking I'm better because of this. Like Tony, in a way, got an ego upheave once he had the suit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he was.
I was awesome before, and now I'm super awesome. You know,
bask in my glory. You know.
Yeah.
You know,
I've privatized world peace. You know?
You know, so I mean that's a big thing. And then you get the Black Widow, who is so ridiculously hot, it hurts. and like,
Agreed.
you know, I've never seen a woman so sexy in my life. I honestly have never.
But
And
but you know,
there's a lot of competition for that, but she is
yeah.
so sexy.
And I'll tell you this
But
too, you have to give a lot of credit to Scarlett Johansson too, just as an
yeah,
actress. I mean, because I mean, yeah, she is so super hot,
yeah.
but the work she put into that character,
Oh yeah.
you know, it's like
Yeah.
when you're
Very,
watching it,
very
it's
James
like you're
Bond.
hot, but once she gets, you know,
Yeah.
once she's actually in the fight and everything, you kind of forget about the fact she's hot
Yeah.
No,
to a
I
certain
don't.
degree.
I
You know,
don't.
No,
well, I
I
mean,
don't think that. I don't think
I
that
wouldn't say
hot
you
at
forget
all.
that she's hot, but it's like
Right.
it's you're sitting there and it's like she's believable.
Yeah,
You're
Jason,
not
like
like
she
Jason,
watching
made
it
the
like going,
character.
okay, here's some hot chick, and all she's got is she looks great and she's doing whatever. It's like you totally believe that character.
well, you know what though? She's very James Bond like,
Yeah.
and and going back to what we were saying before, we're jumping around, but like saying like, what movies did I not like? I wasn't crazy about Black Widow. I wasn't like I didn't need the movie. It was an okay movie.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad, but I didn't need it, and I think it's because of, and it's unfortunate. It's when it was released. You know, due to
Yeah.
delays. It was supposed to be released before she died in the MCU,
Yeah.
and it was released after she died in the MCU. So that kind of was like, all right, now it's like a prequel in a sense. I'm
Yeah.
like, I
Right.
already know what's going to happen, whatever. You know, so I really wasn't invested into the character, but she herself portrayed herself as such a James Bond esque character.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen a lot of spy movies with Black Widow.
Yeah.
I really would. I really
And
would
I
have
mean, and
been
ultimately,
into that.
that really what is the character is. I mean, she's
Yeah.
ultimately a spy. You know, like when we see her, in the beginning. Oh God, I'm having a brain fart. Exactly which movie started. But when we
She
see
was in
her
Iron
being,
Man. She was in Iron
Iron Man
Man.
2, right?
yeah.
I
Well,
think it
when
was Iron
we
Man
see
2.
her, she's being interrogated, and the phone rings, and it's Coulson,
Oh yeah,
and she's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Yeah,"
Yeah.
she's like, "Yeah, I'm working on it right now. I've got him exact." She's leaned back in a chair over a pit. You strapped a chair. She's like, "I've got him right where I want him. He's about to tell me everything."
He's like,
The fact that
what?
she uses her looks as one of her weapons because
Yeah,
she knows a lot of the people that she's going up again are just going to see her as this hot, sexy babe and don't. They totally underestimate her intelligence, her ability to fight, her tactics,
yeah,
and that's how. And she just waits till she is truly like a Black Widow. She gets you in the web and you don't realize you're in the web until she bites you.
yeah. So she bites
Right.
your head off. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
she can bite my head off. Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Now, what would be really messed up is if you get in there and like the old movie from back in the day where you have sex with her and then she turns into a giant Black Widow. That'd be messed up. But that was with Patty Duke. If everybody wants to look that up, it was a movie about a Black Widow woman who she would go to the bar and she would meet a guy and then she would take him back to her place. She would have sex with him. And as soon as she was done, she would turn into a giant Black Widow spider and eat the dude. I'm telling you. Check it out.
That's
It's worth a watch.
something we should talk about on Shit Your Pants Wednesday when we get that
It
going
really
again.
is, and it's a wonderful movie. And you can see it on YouTube,
Anyway.
by the way. So anyway, but
Yeah.
I
Back to our
digress.
Avengers.
Yeah, back to our Avengers movie. So we get this great movie. We get this a very clean story. It wasn't complicated, which is that's sometimes a problem with a lot of these movies, where you're like, what's happening? Why do I care? Like it's not so much like I don't care if he does this. Like what's happening, and you're like you don't care. But when you don't understand what's happening, you're like, and now all of a sudden I'm 6 years old and I'm in the middle of a riot, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
That's when a movie goes awry, and luckily the MCU manages to avoid that.
Yeah.
With
There is a
not
certain time where you keep it
a
simple.
plot.
Keep it simple.
And it was. I mean, Avengers
Mhm.
was simple.
Mhm.
Loki comes in. He gets these aliens to come in and attack Earth. And to date, that was the biggest thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
And there you go. And I'm like, all right, I'm cool with this. And
Yeah, I
next to these
remember
guys-
leading up to when the Avengers came out. I said, "There's no way they're going to be able to pull this off."
Yeah.
Just like back in the day, they said you will never see an X-Men movie because too many characters, too many dynamics, too much
Right.
special effects. You'll never see it be made. And now, I mean, you know,
Years later,
it's
look how many
incredible
movies
what
we
they're
got.
doing.
Yeah, and it's true, and if you lay the groundwork right the first time, then you're like, all right, now I have the confidence. And in all honesty, the DCEU could have been right along with it, but I think
Absolutely.
honestly they want to see how is this going to play out. Is Marvel going to fall? Because they're not going to follow suit. If Marvel
Right.
fell on their face, and then fall on their faces as well. At the time, Warner Brothers, and owned at that time, roughly around that time, owned by AT&T, were like, we're not letting you comic book people choose the movies. We're still going to choose the movies because we want to make money, period, end of story. And we don't care about the fans and blah, blah, blah. And that was a big problem with the DCEU. We could have had a lot of great DCEU movies to match the MCU movies. We didn't because of let's see what Marvel's going to do. Let's see what happens.
And they waited too long.
They waited,
and that was the big thing.
Yeah.
They waited way too long because if they had just given it just a couple of Marvel movies and said, "It seems like it's working, let's try," and start off doing it.
Well, you know what their problem was too.
It felt like a lot of the DCEU stuff. It was like rushed. It was rushed. We got to quick throw them together.
Well, they
instead of building it up.
They jumped from Batman and Superman to Justice League. Like there was no buildup of any other character.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh well, you'll see them in Justice League, but then we'll build them up afterwards. I don't fucking care what the at that point.
Yeah. Right.
I mean? You totally ejaculated way too fucking soon, for lack of a better term. I apologize if I offend anybody by that. And you blew your load way too quick, and that was a problem. And like you said, they rushed way too many things in there. I don't think we need to see, like, it was almost like, when you go to a round table and like when we do these shows, we say, hey, what show do we want to do? And everybody starts throwing things out. We're like, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. And it's like there's got to be an organization involved in this. And like, we don't just like haphazardly do shows on this network. We think about what it is. Oh, that would be good, but let's do that after we do this one. We kind of like organize. And it seems like with the DCEU, it was not organized. Whereas with Marvel, there's a storyline. They already said, all right, it's like the next 10 years. What do we want to do? We're gonna. So I mean, obviously they know. They're not going movie by movie. They know what's happening.
Right.
They know what they're leading to.
Yeah.
And
they like I said, they sat down and they said, this is how we want it to play out if it takes off and it's successful.
Yeah.
They already said, we're gonna do this. And hey, you know what? If we don't get past movie number 3 because they're not successful,
right.
Well, then so be it. Nobody ever's going to know about this. It doesn't come to pass.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's kind of like well, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna run a marathon. Well, how are you going to do that? I'm just going to go run a marathon, dude. You're 40 pounds overweight. You haven't run since you were a teenager. You only run if something's chasing you, trying to kill you. No, you're going to go out. You're going to start running around the block. And if I suddenly find I can't, jog a mile and a half, I'm sure as hell not going to go try running a marathon. But that's what DCU did. They just said like, okay, we're just going to run.
Yeah.
And going like, you ain't got you ain't got the stamina for it, dude.
Well, I mean, think about what happens with this, and once we're jumping around, of course.
I know we are jumping around,
but now that DC is Warner Brothers was with AT&T, and now it's with Discovery. AT&T sold to Discovery. They are now in the search of a Kevin Feige role and do what the MCU is doing. There's no, as a fan, to do it 10 years later, to do it 20 years later, as long as you do it right.
Yeah.
Who cares? You don't have to be neck and neck.
No.
Right.
You
You
don't.
know what I mean? To be successful. Because
Yeah, and it almost seems like the DC movies are copying the Marvel thing. I don't know where the storylines played out in years of comic books, but it
Yeah.
just seems like DC's reaction to like a successful Marvel uh, franchise is just to copy it. I just
Well, that's comic books in general. That's also pro
yeah,
wrestling. I mean,
true, yeah,
plagiarism is key.
yeah,
And that's always been a trope in comics in general.
yeah,
But as far as it's very obvious to say, oh well, it's working. All right, let's get a combined movie, quick,
Mhm.
because they had Avengers. There was no reason for that. If they
Mhm.
explored a couple different characters and say 5 years after Avengers happened, we
Mhm.
get a Justice League movie, I think we would have been okay.
Yeah,
yeah,
You know what I mean?
and
I think that's
it's almost like the people at responsible for the DCEU were like, well, there are Marvel fans and there are DC fans.
hmm
They overlook the fact that there are people who are fans of both. And you know what? If you're a little bit slower out of the gate, but you're giving me quality product,
I'll watch it.
when there's not a
Yeah.
Marvel movie, I'm going to come see your movie because guess
right,
what? I'm a fan of both, and you're almost going to do better because guess what? Your movie is not. You're not trying to get somebody who goes like, well, you know what? Money's kind of tight. I can either go see this or this in a theater, you know. And well, I like them both, but I like this one a little bit more than the other, so that's where I'm going to spend my money. And I'll see that one when it comes out on video.
But that's also the
So
same way
and
with
it's
buying
like,
comics,
mhm,
in a
yeah.
sense. I mean, and here's the thing too. Like there are preferences. My daughter likes DC because she feels that they're darker.
Hmm.
They're darker in nature. And a lot of it has to do with the more fantastic element. There's a lot of magic
Hmm.
in DC. There's a lot of sorcery. There's a lot of demons. There's a lot of stuff like that. MCU is very grounded, and
Hmm.
always has been very grounded. X-Men was created in a sense to publicize racism, in a
Yeah.
sense.
yes,
I mean, mutants were substituted for African Americans in that aspect, and to tell that story. So, with Marvel, it's very grounded, whereas with DC, it's very fantastic. So they're two different,
Hmm.
in a sense, two different genres. It is superheroes, it is villains, but it's two different things. So you're going to fall where you lie, in that sense. Um, but to show like what the MCU is doing and is creating a comic book, a visual comic book
Yeah.
for us. And remember too, they're also bringing in fans that never read the comics,
Hmm.
that just
Yeah.
maybe
And
like the
again,
set.
I'm part of that group. Like I said,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm familiar with the characters because they were such a large part of pop culture as a kid.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and we had, and we did have, the Hulk TV show. We
yeah,
had, the Saturday morning cartoons. You had Spider-Man and his amazing friends.
right,
And we
exactly.
all had, even if we weren't big into the comics, there were other outlets where we were exposed to these characters, or we had friends who were
Yeah,
big into it, and so we had the knowledge. But then
yeah,
when it's a movie, and I can sit there and say, well, gee, even though maybe I wasn't so into this as a young person, now it's
mhm,
in a movie, it's condensed, it's consolidated. I can go in and I can really start to learn these characters and essentially, really find out about what I was kind of missing back then, because back then my life was different, and the way I did things as a kid didn't really lend to me sitting around reading a comic. Well, now
right,
exactly.
I'm in my late 20s, my 30s, now my 40s, and stuff comes along where it's like, you know what? Now I'm spending more of my time where I'm hanging out at
Yeah,
home. I'm doing
right.
this. I'm not, I come home from work and I'm like, I'm tired. I want to eat dinner and just relax. Well, guess what? Now it's like, hey, it's date night. Me and the wife are going to go see the movie. I can go see this
Yeah,
movie because it looks great. You know, I kind of know what I'm getting into. Or it's like, hey, now I can sit back and, hey, I missed it in the theater, but now I can either, you know, get the DVD, you know, rent it on demand, you know, and you're rediscovering it, and you're, like you said, Dan, you're generating new fans. Now all these characters, and I'm super excited because then too, when I go into it, I'm not sitting there like, you know, a total comic book geek and picking it apart.
Right.
You know, as we said, you know, there are so many that go like, oh, well, they got this wrong, and they got this wrong, and they got this wrong, and they got this wrong. And it's like, well, how about the fact that what did they get right, and the fact that it was enjoyable as hell.
Right.
You know, I'm sitting there and I'm getting the story going like, oh, this is cool. And I said, there may be certain movies because again, I'm not as big into the character or whatever. I know we talked about this on another episode at some point, Dan, where it's like, you know, Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
As far as the MCU, he was probably the one character that's part of the whole MCU that I was the least familiar with.
Right.
You know, and right before like Infinity War came out and everything, I'm like, hey, Dan, I haven't seen it yet. You know, do I really need to see it? You know, am I going to not understand what's going on if I miss it? And Dan said to me, he's like, yeah, you know, Infinity War, you'll get what's going on. It's not really recommended, but I do recommend you watch it because he is a really cool character and you will understand a lot more of what's going on. You'll better understand it, you know?
Yeah.
And I did. And my wife and I watched it. And I'm like, that was cool as shit. You know,
the ones that I enjoyed the most were the ones that I had no idea of the character. Doctor Strange, great example. I had no interest because I thought he looked goofy back in the comic days. And you know, this wizard, like I'm not into wizards, you know, but I was blown away by that movie and thought it was one of the best. Guardians of the Galaxy, same thing. I'm like, they got a raccoon and they've got a talking tree that only says one phrase. I'm like, I'm out. I mean, you know, it sucks. But the movie, you know, when I saw the movie, it was amazing. It's one of my favorites.
And some people say no, Dan, or whatever, but it's a new level of Star Wars for me when I saw that. You know, I mean, I was like, I really liked every character. I never heard of them before, the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, same.
Not even in the comic. I never heard of them.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, all right, so the first thing you do is you look up what is the Guardians of the Galaxy, what's going on. You're like, okay, blah 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 blah. Okay, so this is what they are. Okay, and then I go through and I watch the movie, and I'm like, how Star Wars is this? This is like so fun. And what I mean by Star Wars is that it was fun, it was exciting, it was very good, you know, and I was like, these characters are great. Like you said, there's a raccoon, there's a tree. You know, Peter Quill is awesome. You know, I love how he's like so stuck in the 80s and the 70s and stuff.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, seriously.
It's kind of like we watched it and we could all totally identify with Peter Quill. You know,
it's like Guardians of the Galaxy had one of the best soundtracks. Ever. You know what I mean? And I think that was great.
And again, and I know we're going to get away from, you know, the event, but let me just say this about Guardians of the Galaxy that is so wonderful, especially with sitting around watching it with people who aren't as into like music. Because I mean, obviously Dan and I being DJs, there are certain things we start picking up on, but it's like where they use certain songs were perfect.
Yeah.
You know, like even like, you know, they're escaping from the prison. And what are they playing? The Pina Colada song. And people going like, well, it's like, well, okay, cool. It works kind of well for it. And I'm sitting there going like, so many people don't realize that the name of that song is Escape. Parentheses, the Pina Colada song. It's like they're escaping.
Now see,
the song is Escape.
See, you just thought Jason's song.
I'm today years old when I found that out.
And I'm like, that is so freaking cool. You know, but they make it work with the action where it's just kind of this fun little cheesy song,
Easter
whatever.
eggs, these little Easter eggs, and it's the truth. Music plays a big part in these movies and setting the tone, etc. But yeah, they're great movies, and at that point, we already had Avengers, and it's like at that point we're pretty much, what can Marvel do wrong? Let's watch it. You know what I mean? If DC put out something I didn't know about, I'd be very skeptical based on how well or not well their movies did.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Now they didn't put out that much. DCEU. My favorite was probably Wonder Woman, the first one.
Yeah,
Out of those,
that was very well done.
it was very well done. But the rest of them, I thought they sucked. Now, granted, I watched the 4-hour Justice League cut, Snyder cut, and that was amazing. I thought that was great, and that's what it should have been. But aside from that, like they didn't really do anything. So I was like, you know what?
I will say I liked
I'm gonna go see
Aquaman.
it because I'm gonna see Aquaman was decent, but it wasn't fantastic.
No, it wasn't.
You know,
It was good enough. It earned a spot on my DVD rack.
yeah,
You know, because
Yeah.
mainly because obviously too the wife just oh Jason Momoa,
Yeah, right.
and I'm going oh Amber Heard, even though she's a deranged lunatic. It's like, okay, let's forget about what she like. It's what she is in personal, in real life. But Mara, oh, hello, nurse.
Oh,
But,
what's her name? Was his mother, right? Who was his mother? Was who played his mother?
Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman.
Mm-hmm.
She's hitting a wall. I don't know. We're getting off subject, but
anyway, yeah.
Nicole
Anyway,
Kidman's hitting a
but
wall.
yeah, but again, but although we're not, because again, we're talking about how really what did Avengers do right?
Yeah.
Avengers, it took this whole storyline, at least what they said, it brought all these great characters together.
Yeah.
And again, like Dan, as you said earlier, it did it right. It wasn't like suddenly we got this movie where, they're all now a team. We didn't see how they became a team, and they're gelling and they're doing whatever. It really showed us that, they're kind of all being brought together, and it really takes at the time, what we perceived to be, the death of Coulson to really be like, to truly bring them, it's like, what, I don't care what we got to do, but we're going to work together because we're going to avenge him.
Yeah.
Right.
It was the one thing that we all had in common. We all loved, for whatever reason, this person, this agent, Phil Coulson.
He was the fanboy. He represented us.
Yeah. Yeah.
He honestly represented us in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was the fanboy.
Yeah.
And that was a cool thing. Mm-hmm. Think about that for a second. We, as fans of the movie, received representation in the movie.
Yeah.
In the form of Phil Coulson. And I think that's such a unique thing in just itself, to sit there and say, hey, fans, you're going to be heard in this movie. You're going to be a part of this movie.
Yeah.
And your name is going to be Phil Coulson. And I think that's just such a great thing. Like, who would have thought of that? You know what I mean? That type of thing.
Yeah. The fact that, I've got all your trading. Can you autograph them for me later? It's like, we're like, literally, if you saw, Chris Evans, somewhere out and be like, hey man, I've got, my copy of, Captain America, on DVD, where will you sign the box, or will you sign the comic or something? That would be us.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's another unique scenario that Marvel did for us. And then, like you said, it opened up a lot of properties like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Which again, they did, because again, they didn't show them all together. Boom, it brought them together as a team in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in such a great way, in such a fun way. It was just a fun movie. And then you see how they're correlated with everybody else, and how they're and here's another thing that Marvel did. They really created, in a sense, the end credit scene.
Yeah.
Or at least made it popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you can't, every movie I watch now, I hang into the end of the credits,
because you never know. I did that with Ghostbusters. I sat there going I got so used to sitting through. It's like my wife was all like, "Oh man, we gotta use the bathroom." And I'm sitting there like, I didn't say my seat. I kind of got up because I'm like, "I ain't gonna be no end credit," but something just told me, just stay. And like, you see this great end credit scene. And I go walking out of the theater, seeing my wife and my son. They're coming out of the bathroom and whatever. I'm like, I know something you don't know.
There was 2 scenes in that movie. Yeah, there were 2 end credit scenes in Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
So it set a
tone for the movies in general.
Yeah, for the industry. I stuck around for the Evil Dead remake. And at the end, they got Bruce Campbell. After the credits, you kind of see his profile almost like an Alfred Hitchcock movie, and he just kind of hits a groovy, and it was like that one word was enough for me to stick around. I got my payout.
Well, once again, we're talking about Bruce Campbell. Like, he was great in Doctor Strange 2.
Yes,
nothing in the role. I mean, he doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah,
but like he, now something that was funny in the Tobey Maguire universe, had they been able to go to Spider-Man 4, he was going to be Mysterio.
Oh wow, that's crazy!
And his character was going to be built up, like all his cameos.
Yeah,
he was supposedly going to be the same guy.
Oh, very cool.
And that he just grew this hatred for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Based on the thing, and then he was going to be Mysterio. That was going to be like his swan song, is that he would have been the bad guy.
Oh, that's
Spider-Man
awesome.
4. And I think what a great idea. And that's and Grant, because he's a big what's his face? He works with
Raimi,
yeah.
So much. Yeah. And Raimi was like, it's such a fan of his, and he'd be like, that was going to be, and what a payoff that would have been.
Yeah.
So we get that cool payoff in Doctor Strange 2 with him being in there, just in that short little thing. Once again, a nice little cameo with Bruce Campbell. You might say, well, does it even make sense? It doesn't matter. It makes sense. He doesn't even care. Who cares? Everything I just watched in Doctor Strange 2, I really care if Bruce Campbell's makes sense in there, at that point. But, like, what a great thing. We then get multiple Avengers movies. We then get multiple, and the pace is now, if you notice, is getting higher and higher. They're setting the expectation higher and higher. Captain America: Winter Soldier, one of the best MCU movies, period, in my opinion. And what a great movie that was. That was Avengers level, in my opinion. Blew our minds. And here's a cool thing, too. The Marvel television interacting with movies.
Yes.
Making you say, oh, I got to go watch the movie.
Right.
They're talking about that on the TV show. What cross-marketing that is. I mean, think about this for a second. What a ingenious project the MCU is in general. Just a phenomenal thing. Now, you blow your load with Endgame. Okay. What a payoff. Endgame, Infinity War and Endgame, what a payoff. What a super, super payoff. Now, you got Endgame. Where the hell do you go from here? Right? You get Spider-Man No Way Home, which is a decent movie. But I love how, once again, we're not starting the story over. We're continuing.
Yes.
The story didn't end with Endgame. It just continued.
Because, hey, life goes on. Because it is. It's really, life goes on. And, and I love the way that I wouldn't say, like No Way Home, I wouldn't quite put it as high as, say, like Endgame. I wouldn't put it at Endgame level.
No.
But the fact is that Marvel said that, it's kind of like everything life goes in peaks and valleys. And they get you up here, but they don't suddenly go bang.
Well,
they go, they start bringing you down, and they go, we're going to keep this going, introduce new stuff, and then we'll start bringing you on the upswing again as we're slowly and intelligently continuing the story, introducing new characters and pushing back again.
In a correction of what I said, I meant Far From Home, not No Way Home.
Yeah.
Far From Home was the second one.
Yeah, Far From Home,
a decent movie. No Way Home, I was not expecting what I got in No Way Home.
Yeah, that was really incredible.
Matt, I'll tell you, I mean, I'm a Spider-Man fanboy.
Everybody calls him Spider Dan for a reason.
That's me. I love Spider-Man. And No Way Home blew my mind like a crackhead in Camden finding a crackhead. I was like, give me all of this. And my hair was sticking up, and I was like, I guess. And I said at the end, I said they could stop making movies at this point. Yeah. If I didn't watch another movie, I'd be satisfied with what I just got done watching. And they did such a great thing. And then get Doctor Strange too. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, they followed it right up with that.
They did it again, and it was even bigger. Now, with the characters being some of them gone, and you're moving on to new characters and stuff like that. What Kevin Feige does, which is kind of cool, is he sets up little minor characters in movies to say, well, we're going to eventually go to this. And what he sets up in a movie might not be for another movie. It might be for a Disney Plus special or a TV show, so on and so forth, which is kind of cool because the Disney Plus shows are just as important as the movies.
Yeah,
You get
they are.
Yeah.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier was a great series. WandaVision was a great series. I loved Hawkeye. I don't know about you guys. I really liked
I
enjoyed
haven't
that a lot,
watched
too.
Hawkeye yet. I heard a lot of mixed stuff, but I really dig him as a character, and I will eventually get around to watching it.
You know what you're going to get out of that? Die Hard.
Really?
You're going to get that
Cool.
because remember,
Cool. I love Die Hard.
Hawkeye is not a superpower.
No, he's not.
He's
just an exceptionally skilled archer.
Exactly.
He's not really a superhero, but he's almost got like superhuman skills with his,
he can hold his own.
Yeah.
As a normie. He's a normie.
Yeah.
But Hawkeye, a great series. It's a great series and on level with like Daredevil.
Okay.
Yeah.
On level, right? I would say about that, right? On level with Daredevil.
And I had zero expectations going in.
I did too. Because
I was really
like Hawkeye, but I'm like, he's not my favorite, and I went in, I loved it. And then you have all these other stuff, so they're setting up a lot of stuff. Now, going back into what movies didn't you like, then you get Eternals. I hated Eternals. Saw it in the movie.
Yeah, I never even bothered going because it was
Me either.
I hated it. And the reason I hated it was because these characters, they weren't likable to me. This is my opinion. Granted, you can go in there and say I love them. They weren't likable. These characters were supposedly out the whole time from the moment they hit Earth. And they were out before the MCU started. And they were known. Like, they didn't hide their powers. They didn't hide. So you sit there and say, well, where the hell were you during the Battle of Manhattan? Where the hell were you when Thanos came around? Like, where the fuck were you guys at?
Yeah.
Right? And they didn't help with shit. And then the way it was too, some of their cool, I don't want to give away the show, but like some of their characters are like, what a waste of this character. What a waste of that character, whatever. You know what I mean? So you're like, So I had no need for the movie whatsoever. Some cool things with that, they like a character that they introduce loosely. And I'm not saying like he's not that character yet, but they give the nod, is the Black Knight, which is a very eclectic side character in Marvel. He's got the sword of Excalibur. You see what they did, right? At the end, in an end credit scene, he gets to talk to somebody. I personally thought it was Nick Fury talking off camera to him, right? Turns out it's Blade. So they introduced Blade at the end of Eternals.
Yeah, I heard that.
Which I think is great. Because they have Blade, you got Ghost Rider is going to be coming into play soon.
Mm-hmm.
And if they collaborate with Sony again, Morbius, which I just thought was a decent movie, not MCU level, but a decent movie. Now you have the makings of a lot of great stories, a dark universe type of thing, so on and so forth. And then there's other stuff that coming out, like you got the Ms. Marvel, which I am not looking forward to. I will watch it.
Yeah, same.
I watch everything. Yeah. I watch everything, not because, like you will say, well, why are you going to watch it? You have to watch everything because everything will be connected. Even the crap will be connected. Now, granted, I may watch this show and say, you know what, that was decent, and change my mind. But I don't like the character. Never liked the character at all. She's a Inhuman, to give you a kind of a backup. And I don't know if she'll be an Inhuman in the series. That's what we have to wait and see if they embellish that a little bit. But she's an Inhuman, meaning that she went through the Terrigen, and like what happened was they come out of it and she has powers. Okay? As a character, she has like Mr. Fantastic's powers in the comic book. I don't know if she has those powers in the show or not, but that kind of bites off a little bit. She is um, I think she's from Pakistan. So, and it's a girl. So it's very, in my eyes, it's like we need to make a character that really is PC. We're going to do all the total, a lot of pandering, I think, with the character. And I don't like that. Don't force stuff down my throat. I don't like that. And she's just a silly character. She's a teenager, but unlike Peter Parker, who's a likable person, and granted, Spider-Man, and I'm biased, but she's very teen-like, and she doesn't like kind of like almost respect. Like she's very fangirl for herself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I don't like that. As a 48-year-old man, I'm like, you're not doing nothing for me, kid. Stop.
Yeah.
But,
I have my own teenager who already acts like that, and they don't have powers.
Right.
Yeah, bitch, I don't need you. Yeah,
as
exactly.
as like that. So, that was kind of like that. That was with Spider-Man and Peter Parker. I mean, that was done so well. I mean, the fact that he wasn't well, just in general with the character as a whole. It's like suddenly he has these powers, and he's not full of himself.
Yeah.
He's like amazed. He's amazed, like, oh my God, look what I can do. Just like just like a normal person would be, especially as a teenager, would be like, and he slowly figures out, but he never, at least not unless it advances a certain story and and helps develop him as a character, never gets into that thing where he's like full of himself.
But think about this for a second.
At most, he only ever wants to kind of get involved and prove himself as an equal.
You have to give credit to Tom Holland because some of this stuff is improv. In case you guys did not know, some of the stuff on camera is improv in a sense. The way he took the scene and said, "I'm going to do it like this," and he does it.
Right.
And one in particular, and when I tell you, I cried my eyes out in the movie. I cried my eyes out at the end of Infinity War when Thanos makes a snap and everybody's starting to fade away. What you don't realize is that because of his spider sense, that's why he's like, Mr. Stark, I don't feel good. I don't feel right. He was feeling it before it was going to happen.
Right.
A lot of people didn't pick up on that. Like, why did he get so much verbiage before he faded? Everybody else was like, what? Like, why did he know ahead of time? It's because of his spider sense. That is such a cool writing trope. And attention to detail, which I thought was great. Yeah. But when he goes in there, Mr. Stark, I don't want to go. I don't want to. And like the way Tom Holland portrays Parker is that you forget that as amazing, quote unquote, as he is, he's a teenage kid.
Yeah.
He's still a boy. You go back to his movies, like you go back to Homecoming. The Vulture drops the roof on top of him. And he has his mask off. His mask is in the water, and he's getting crushed. And he starts yelling for help. And he's scared, and he's crying. And then he looks at himself, and he sees half of his face as Spider-Man because he sees the mask in the water. And then he realizes, oh shit, wait, I'm Spider-Man. I can help myself. Mm-hmm. And he calms down. And I said, that's such an amazing thing that you got to remember that he's not perfect. You know what I mean? He's still a teenage kid.
He is truly still learning about everything.
Learning. Yeah. And he's a boy. He's not a man. He's a boy. And as responsible as he is and as mature as he is, he still has maturing to do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And he's still a kid. And and that made him even more lovable in a sense, and more endearing because I'm like, there's in lies is like his own like sometimes his own self gets the better of him, and those scenes they choke you up because you're like, oh my God, like I want to hug him, I want to hug this kid, you know what I mean? Like he's such a good kid, and I don't want bad things to happen to him. you know.
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing. And Peter Parker is a person that unfortunately you hear this a lot. I can't have good things and stuff like that. And that's the burden that he takes on himself. And doesn't he take that on in No Way Home when he says, "Fuck it, everybody has to forget me to
Yeah.
fix this.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to sacrifice my love with MJ. I'm going to sacrifice Ned, the whole 9 yards, blah blah blah." And he becomes a somebody. And uh, in the comics, like Ned becomes like a hobgoblin. By the way, just so you know, I don't know if they're going to do that with the Ned that we know. But just so you know, that character in a comic becomes a villain against Spider-Man, not unlike Harry did.
Yeah.
So, and they kind of make mention of that in No Way Home when he's like, I'll never go against you, blah blah blah. And he's like, that type of thing, which is kind of funny, and that's a nod to that character. But like, that's the thing. Like Marvel pays such attention to detail and such attention to small detail that that comic fan is like, yes, they got that. I picked up on this, I picked up on that. And there's like Easter eggs all over the place. You know what I mean? Which is kind of cool. And it makes the casual fan really want to look into it. What does it do? It makes a casual fan say, you know what, maybe I'm going to pick up a comic book. Maybe I'm going to cross genres here. I'm going to check this out. I like that character. Let me read up on that character. That type of thing. So once again, it's something where we have endless possibilities coming up with Disney Plus, with the movies. I think it's just like full speed ahead. There's so much content, and with them making so much money from these movies, they have the green light to do whatever the fuck they want, and that's great for us as fans.
And now with the multiverse going on, they could bring back any character they want.
Yeah,
and it's just
right.
Yeah, and you can you can recast them. Let's say if it's somebody, this way if you've got somebody like you said, we know that hey, Robert Downey Jr. is like, I'm done with the character. I did my story.
75 million per film.
You can bring Tony Stark back into the fold with a total new character, and it's still believable because again, it's a Tony Stark from another universe, a different timeline, and it's different, and you can get that character and see them in a whole new light and do different stuff with them. I know, Dan and I were doing a show on the MCU Bleeding Edge. We were talking about like, what would you like to see about a movie? We were talking like some of the stuff you can do with the multiverse. You can take a character and totally change them. You can take somebody who's a good guy and you can make him a bad guy. You can make a bad guy a good guy. You can make this person become this person. Like one of the things I was talking about was with like Captain America goes another part of the multiverse, and where the United States is actually responsible for starting World War II. The U.S. is the bad guy, and it's like you could have Iron Man in it, but Iron Man isn't Tony Stark; it's Howard Stark. Right. You could do all this really weird, crazy stuff with in introducing the multiverse.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that too, it could be one-off movies.
Yeah.
Like What If, like the series What If.
Yeah, you could exactly. It can be its own standalone
movies. You can literally do a what if series of movies, and do stuff like that, which I think is fantastic. Now that's another series that if you haven't checked it out, you have to check it out. What If, which is on Disney Plus, that's really good. And that's a comic based on a comic, and you get Marvel Zombies. You get what if T'Challa was Star-Lord instead of Peter Quill? What if Peggy Carter became Captain Carter rather than Steve Rogers becoming Captain America? Now, Captain Carter is not to be confused with Captain Britain.
Yeah,
two totally different characters. Keep that in mind.
We got Captain Carter, and we basically got Steve Rogers in an Iron Man suit.
Yeah, which is how about that, right? And that's what we did. So I mean that's another great thing. Let's do some final thoughts here. We're going to end the show up. I think, Jace, let's go with you first. What do you think?
Well, the way that Marvel set up this whole universe and bangs out probably 6 projects a year. I wish that somebody had the balls to do that with Star Wars, because when Disney bought over Star Wars, I don't think that they had a whole plan. I think they could just put out any garbage and put a Star Wars name on it, and it was going to fly. So then they said, "Oh, it's just a little too much too soon." Well, no, that's not the case, because Marvel's been killing it for how many years now? And and now with Star Wars now is like the Mando verse. I think they finally figured that out, and they've got John Favreau and help me with the other guy, Dave Filoni.
Yeah.
They're kind of in charge of the entire Star Wars universe now, so they've got it all mapped out, and everything's going to spread out from like the Mandalorian. I think they're finally going to get it right. And Obi-Wan right now is just, I can't wait for Wednesday to see the next episode. It's fantastic. But I honestly, as far as Marvel, when they put out the past 2 movies, I think they set the bar so damn high that they're, the expectations of the next movie are just going to be unattainable. But I said the same thing when Endgame came out, and here they go, and they've I wouldn't say topped it. I would say gotten real close to that level of excitement and storytelling, and I just can't wait to see where the next 10 years takes us.
Yeah. Matt, what do you think?
Well, again, as the casual comic fan, Avengers really was great. It showed us what they could do. They showed us again truly that the plan they had was working. They did that wonderful build up to it, and they've continued to build off it. And as I mentioned earlier, they're not always trying to top. They always seem like they're going to do this. We'll bring it down a little bit, kind of let you catch your breath, but they never go down here where it loses momentum. They let it bring up here, and they kind of go, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to let you catch your breath, and then we're going to take you up here. And now we've got you up here, and we'll go a little bit. We'll catch your breath, but it always keeps going up and up. But they do it smartly. They don't try and rush it. They let it breathe. They let it develop, and they're not afraid to let it develop. Say that we're going to give you a movie that's not at this level because this movie doesn't deserve to be at this level. It needs to be here and go up, because starting here makes no sense. And again, just, it really brought these characters for me, again, as a casual fan, where it's like, I can't wait to see what they're going to put out next. And again, Dan mentioned the Eternals and said, he really didn't like it. It wasn't something I never even bothered watching it because I had zero, But the thing is that Marvel's doing, though, and it's great with it, is they are not afraid to go into some of these other characters. They'll say, well, we can put this out. And hey, even if it doesn't do well enough to keep pushing that storyline, we can branch off of it. And we did give fans of this particular group of characters or individual character, we gave them something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we did everything else so well that it's in the budget. That even if it only breaks even, we're all right. They know their fan base, and they're getting into the stuff that they know that there's a big enough fan base out there. They can do it at a level that it's not going to be a flop for them. And again, like I said, they can ultimately use that to branch off to maybe even something that does even have a bigger fan base, so they can have a bigger budget and they can make it a blockbuster. And it's, oh my God, look at what they gave us.
Yeah.
Then that's my take.
I mean, I think the fact that we have Disney Plus and the fact that they have very successful 6-episode series, which in a sense is kind of like a mini movie in a sense.
Sure.
I love that because there are characters that necessarily might not get the correct treatment on the silver screen. Okay, but on the smaller screen, they get a lot of help. Like Hawkeye, we talked about that earlier, would not have done well as a movie.
Right.
But as a
No.
series,
100%.
I liked it. I liked it as a series. When Blade comes out, now granted, I wouldn't want to see a Blade movie, but I'll be honest with you, if they say, you know what, we're going to make Blade a series on Disney Plus, I'll go with that. You know,
Yeah.
we have upcoming series She-Hulk, okay, which is going to have Mark Ruffalo guest in it.
Looks amazing.
Looks really good. It looks like it's going to be
Fun,
funny.
I should say.
It's going to be fun. And she's a fun character. That's a key thing, too. Don't change the character up. If the character's serious, leave the character to be serious. Don't make the character fun. You know, that type of thing. I would love for them to do Disney Plus version of The Incredible Hulk. Kind of taken away from Bill Bixby, in a sense.
Yeah.
And making this week-to-week series where he's going from town to town. He's doing something as the Hulk, redeeming himself in a sense. I don't know if we're not gonna get something like that. I really don't think, because they've already changed the character of the Hulk so much in the movies. I think he's beyond that. He's not on the run in a sense. But like something like that, to be able to have a really cool series to give me time away from the movies, I think is great because it keeps me involved. And then your movie is worth the movie, but you didn't lose me as a fan because it took so much time to get this movie out, etc.
Yeah.
So I think we're in a very unique position where until we get that movie out, here's a series for you.
Mhm.
Here's another series for you, you know, so and so forth. And
the fact that they do use the series so well to build up something that'll happen in a movie, you know.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Charlie Cox, who plays Daredevil, he was in No Way Home, if you notice, for a split cameo. He's talking to Peter and all. But he's got a new Daredevil series on Disney Plus. It's a continuation of the Netflix series, so that's cool. But he could break into the movies if the character does well enough with the Disney Plus series. So that's a kind of a cool thing too. You know, it's the introduction of these characters. You have a small screen to kind of test it, see how it does, and go up. So I think we have so much content to be able to watch that we're all going to be satisfied. And I think it's setting the pace for everything. And if it does set the pace as it's already starting with the DCEU, where they're looking for a Kevin Feige-esque figure to kind of run things. Now that they're under Discovery, rather than AT&T, we may now, as fans, be able to see something somewhat equal on the DC side. And we win. We just win with our superhero stuff. You know, can the superhero light burn out? Potentially. But not at the level of writing stays the way it is. So I think what keeps it going is the level of writing. It's not that they're superheroes. It's not shoot 'em up, bang 'em up. It's this. It's a lot of this. And it's really given us a good story. Because after all, that's what really keeps the comic going. It's the dramatic. It's not necessarily the boom, pow, chop. It's the verbiage. And I think that's where we are really, really getting something from this. And it's legitimizing the superhero genre in movies. Like there's no reason why any one of these movies shouldn't be up for an Oscar. Shouldn't be any reason why they're not up for an Academy Award. And not for the special effects, for the acting. Tom Holland, I think, is phenomenal.
In Endgame, I think he could have gotten a supporting actor nod for sure.
Yeah.
Just for that death scene. It was just amazing.
Oh
Your heart sank, and it was
He tore me up. He tore me up, guys.
Yep.
What a great thing. We've had 20 years of MCU, and it's still going strong. We're going to be back with more Capes Not Included coming up soon. Want to thank Jason. I want to thank Matt for jumping on today. Guys, hit that.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for not getting paid. We got to hit the subscribe button down below. We got the notification bell so you can be notified when new stuff comes out. So hit that. Share the channel. All right. Make sure you're telling people about it. We want to get more people on. The more people on, that are watching it, the more shows we can put out, of course. There's plenty of stuff on here for everybody. It's not just Capes Not Included. There's plenty of other shows on there. Matt hosts Shit Your Pants Wednesday. He's on DJ's DJ's Not Included. He's on DJ's After Dark with me, which is also another fun show. Jason is joining the crew of WTF. So that's a great show that's coming back very, very soon as well.
Can't wait.
And he's now a new member here of Capes Not Included, so we're proud to have him on here. So guys, there's plenty of changes, plenty of new stuff on the channel. So I hope you take this ride with us. We're not the MCU, but we're going somewhere. So take the ride with us, and if anything, we'll drop you off somewhere. So okay. So
we can't guarantee it's going to be. It's not going to be a sketchy neighborhood.
Yeah, we can't guarantee that.
We're not going to hold you hostage.
And it might be a 5-mile drop and roll. Potentially is what it's going to be. All right.
Tuck and roll.
But until next time, keep your cape in the wind and your eyes to the stars. Have a great day, everybody.